Have you ever wondered what nightmares lurked beneath the waves millions of years ago? Picture this. You're floating peacefully in crystal clear waters, enjoying the warm sun on your face, when suddenly a shadow passes beneath you. But this isn't just any shadow. This is something so massive, so utterly terrifying, that it makes today's great white sharks look like harmless goldfish. The truth is, our modern oceans are practically a daycare center compared to the absolute death traps that existed in Earth's ancient seas. We're talking about creatures so horrifically powerful that they could swallow a school bus whole, bite through steel like butter, and hunt with the precision of a military submarine. These weren't just big fish with attitude problems. These were evolutionary masterpieces of destruction, perfectly engineered killing machines that dominated every corner of our planet's waters. But here's the thing that'll keep you up at night. If these monsters were still alive today, humans would never have become the dominant species on Earth. We'd be nothing more than bite-sized snacks floating around in their personal buffet. The good news? They're all dead. The bad news? You're about to discover just how close we came to sharing this planet with the most deadly predators that ever existed. In the next 9 minutes, I'm going to take you on a journey through time to meet 5 of the most absolutely terrifying sea monsters that ever lived. We're talking about creatures so nightmarish that Hollywood couldn't even dream them up. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be thanking your lucky stars that these beasts are nothing more than fossils buried deep in the earth. Now, before we dive into this underwater house of horrors, let me tell you something that'll blow your mind. I've spent countless hours researching these creatures, digging through scientific papers, fossil records, and expert testimonies to bring you the most accurate and spine-chilling information possible. What you're about to learn isn't just entertainment. This is real science, real history, and real terror that once ruled our planet's waters. But wait, there's more. These aren't just random scary stories. Each of these creatures represents a different era of Earth's history, showing us how evolution can create monsters beyond our wildest imagination. From armored death machines to spiral-toothed nightmares, from sea serpents longer than blue whales to sharks that could bite through a car. We're about to explore the darkest chapters of marine evolution. So buckle up, because we're about to descend into the abyss of prehistoric terror. And remember, every single one of these creatures was real. They lived, they hunted, they killed, and they ruled the seas with an iron fist for millions of years. Let's start our countdown of death with number 5. A creature so bizarre that scientists spent decades trying to figure out what the hell it actually was. Meet Helicoprion, the buzzsaw shark from your worst nightmares. This thing lived between 290 and 250 million years ago, and it sported the most twisted dental work you've ever seen. Picture a shark, but instead of normal teeth, imagine a circular saw blade made of razor-sharp bone spiraling out of its lower jaw. We're talking about a living, breathing power tool swimming through ancient seas, slicing through anything that dared to cross its path. The spiral of teeth, called a tooth whorl, could grow several feet long and contain dozens of serrated cutting edges. For over a century, paleontologists were completely baffled by this creature. They found these mysterious spirals and rock formations around the world, but nobody could figure out where they belonged on the animal. Some thought it was a tail weapon. Others believed it was some kind of defensive armor. But the truth turned out to be far more terrifying than anyone imagined. This wasn't just decoration. This was a precision killing instrument. Helicoprion used its buzzsaw jaw to slice through the soft flesh of fish and squid like a hot knife through butter. Imagine being a fish swimming peacefully through Permian seas, only to have this mechanical nightmare come spinning toward you with its whirring blade of death. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. Scientists now believe that as Helicoprion grew older, its tooth whorl kept growing and curling, creating an increasingly deadly weapon. The older the shark got, the more dangerous it became. It's like nature decided to create a creature that literally became more lethal with age. The fossil evidence shows us that Helicoprion was no small fry either. These beasts could reach lengths of up to 25 feet, making them apex predators of their time. They cruised through ancient oceans from North America to Europe to Asia, leaving a trail of sliced and diced prey in their wake. What makes Helicoprion even more nightmare-inducing is how it fed. Unlike modern sharks that rely on brute force and powerful bites, this creature was like a surgical instrument of death. It would approach its prey and use that spiraling saw to slice precise cuts, maximizing damage while minimizing its own energy expenditure. It was efficiency killing at its finest. The extinction of Helicoprion came during one of the most catastrophic events in Earth's history. The end Permian mass extinction, also known as the Great Dying, wiped out an estimated 96% of all marine species. Even these buzzsaw sharks couldn't survive the ultimate apocalypse that reset life on Earth. Moving up our list of aquatic terrors, we come to creature number 4, Dunkleosteus, the armored nightmare that redefined what it meant to be a predator. This wasn't just a big fish. This was a 30-foot-long living tank that ruled the seas 308 million years ago, during the late Devonian period. Imagine the most heavily armored military vehicle you've ever seen, then give it the ability to swim at high speeds and equip it with jaws capable of exerting a bite force of over 11,000 pounds per square inch. That's enough crushing power to snap a car in half like a twig. But Dunkleosteus didn't even have teeth in the traditional sense. Instead, it had razor-sharp bony plates that acted like self-sharpening guillotine blades. Here's what made Dunkleosteus absolutely terrifying. It was basically invincible. Its head and neck were encased in thick, overlapping armor plates that could deflect almost any attack. We're talking about bone armor so thick and well-designed that it would make modern military engineers weep with envy. This creature was the medieval knight of the ancient seas, except instead of protecting villages, it was busy devouring everything in sight. But the real horror of Dunkleosteus wasn't just its armor or its crushing bite. It was the speed at which it could unleash death. Biomechanical studies have shown that this creature could open and close its jaws faster than almost any predator that has ever lived. It could go from cruising peacefully to delivering a bone-crushing bite in just 20 milliseconds. Think about that for a second. Blink your eyes right now. That blink took you about 300 milliseconds. Dunkleosteus could have bitten you crushed your bones and started swallowing before your brain even registered what was happening. It was like having a hydraulic press attached to a Formula One race car. The feeding strategy of Dunkleosteus was pure nightmare fuel. It didn't just bite its prey, it pulverized them. Those self-sharpening bone plates would slice through flesh and bone like they were made of paper. Fossil evidence shows that Dunkleosteus would often bite prey completely in half, then swallow the pieces whole. What's even more disturbing is that Dunkleosteus was a cannibal. Paleontologists have found fossilized Dunkleosteus remains inside the stomachs of other Dunkleosteus specimens. These things were so aggressive and so dominant that they would literally eat their own kind without a second thought. The size of Dunkleosteus varied by species, but the largest specimens reached lengths of over 30 feet and weighed as much as 4 elephants. They were the undisputed rulers of Devonian seas, sitting at the very top of the food chain with absolutely no natural predators. Nothing could touch them. Nothing could hurt them. They were the perfect killing machines. But even perfect killing machines have their limits. The late Devonian period was marked by a series of environmental catastrophes that devastated marine ecosystems worldwide. Ocean levels fluctuated wildly, water chemistry changed dramatically, and multiple extinction events swept through the seas. Even the mighty Dunkleosteus couldn't adapt fast enough to survive the changing world. Now we're reaching the truly legendary monsters, and creature number 3 is going to make you grateful that time travel doesn't exist. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Mosasaurus, the sea serpent that makes every monster movie look like a children's cartoon. Living between 70 and 66 million years ago during the late Cretaceous period, Mosasaurus wasn't technically a dinosaur, but it was every bit as terrifying as any T-Rex. These marine reptiles grew to lengths of up to 50 feet, making them longer than most modern whales, but with one crucial difference. Whales are gentle giants that eat tiny krill. Mosasaurus was a hyper-aggressive killing machine that ate everything. Picture a crocodile, but stretch it to the length of a school bus. Give it flippers instead of legs, and equip it with jaws full of razor-sharp teeth the size of bananas. Then make it an incredibly fast swimmer with the intelligence and cunning of a modern monitor lizard. That's Mosasaurus, and it absolutely dominated every ocean on Earth. What made Mosasaurus so terrifying wasn't just its size. It was the combination of size, speed, intelligence, and pure predatory instinct. These creatures had 4-chambered hearts like modern mammals, giving them incredible stamina and endurance. They could chase prey for miles without tiring, turning every hunt into an inevitable death sentence for their victims. The jaws of Mosasaurus were evolutionary masterpieces of destruction. Not only were they packed with dozens of sharp, backward-curving teeth designed to prevent prey from escaping, but they also had a secondary set of teeth in their throat called pterygoid teeth. This meant that once something went into a Mosasaurus mouth, it was physically impossible for it to come back out alive. But here's where Mosasaurus gets really scary. These weren't mindless eating machines. They were intelligent predators that could plan and execute complex hunting strategies. Fossil evidence shows that they would often work together to take down larger prey, using coordinated attacks that would make modern wolf packs look disorganized. The feeding habits of Mosasaurus were absolutely horrific. They didn't just hunt fish and smaller marine reptiles. These monsters actively hunted other massive predators, including sharks, plesiosaurs, and even other mosasaurs. They were the apex predators of apex predators, sitting at the very pinnacle of the marine food web, with nothing above them except pure, unadulterated terror. What's particularly chilling about Mosasaurus is how they killed their prey. Unlike modern crocodiles that grab and roll, or sharks that bite and tear, Mosasaurus used a technique called inertial feeding. They would seize their victim with those massive jaws, then use their powerful neck muscles to literally shake the life out of them before swallowing them whole. Imagine being grabbed by something the size of a city bus and having your bones snapped like twigs as it thrashes you around like a rag doll. The fossil record reveals something even more disturbing about these creatures. They were incredibly successful reproducers, with fossil remains discovered on literally every continent except Antarctica. This means that no matter where you lived on Earth 70 million years ago, if you ventured into the ocean, you were entering Mosasaurus territory. But perhaps the most nightmare-inducing aspect of Mosasaurus was their adaptability. As the late Cretaceous period progressed, these creatures continued to evolve and become even more efficient killers. Some species developed stronger jaws, others became faster swimmers, and some grew to even more massive sizes. They were constantly upgrading themselves into more perfect instruments of death. The extinction of Mosasaurus came with the same catastrophic event that wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. Whether it was an asteroid impact, massive volcanic eruptions, or dramatic climate change, something finally managed to kill off these oceanic overlords. And honestly, it's probably the best thing that ever happened to life on Earth. Now we're entering the realm of creatures so legendary that they've become part of human mythology. Coming in at number 2 on our countdown of aquatic nightmares is Megalodon, the shark so massive and so powerful that it makes every other predator on this list look like a harmless pet. Megalodon ruled the oceans from 23 million to 3.6 million years ago, which means it was still terrorizing the seas when our earliest human ancestors were just beginning to walk upright. Think about that for a second. While our primitive relatives were learning to make simple tools, somewhere in the depths of the ocean, there were sharks the size of naval destroyers cruising around with mouths big enough to swallow a small airplane. We're talking about a creature that could reach lengths of up to 60 feet and weigh as much as 100 tons. To put that in perspective, a modern great white shark maxes out at about 20 feet long. Megalodon was 3 times longer, but because of how volume scales with length, it was actually 27 times more massive. It wasn't just bigger. It was in a completely different category of existence. The bite force of Megalodon has been calculated at somewhere between 40,000 and 182,000 pounds per square inch. That's enough crushing power to bite through a small car or snap a telephone pole in half like a breadstick. Modern great whites have a bite force of about 4,000 psi, which means Megalodon was potentially 4 to 5 times stronger. It could have bitten a great white shark in half without even slowing down. But raw power was just one part of what made Megalodon absolutely terrifying. These creatures were also incredibly intelligent hunters with sophisticated strategies for taking down prey. They didn't just randomly attack everything they saw. They were calculated killers that could assess threats, plan ambushes, and execute coordinated strikes with military precision. The primary prey of Megalodon consisted of whales, dolphins, seals, and other large marine mammals. But here's what's truly horrifying. They didn't just kill these animals for food. Fossil evidence suggests that Megalodon would often target the largest, strongest members of whale pods, effectively preventing those genetic lines from continuing. They were literally shaping the evolution of their prey species through selective predation. The hunting strategy of Megalodon was pure psychological warfare. These creatures would often attack from below and behind, using the sun's glare on the water's surface to mask their approach. By the time a whale realized what was happening, it was already too late. Megalodon would deliver a devastating bite to the whale's flippers or tail, crippling it and preventing escape, then circle back to finish the job at their leisure. What makes Megalodon even more terrifying is that they were incredibly successful as a species. They dominated the world's oceans for over 19 million years, which is an absolutely staggering length of time in evolutionary terms. For comparison, modern humans have only existed for about 300,000 years. Megalodon was the undisputed ruler of the seas for 63 times longer than our entire species has existed. The teeth of Megalodon are perhaps the most iconic fossils ever discovered. These triangular blades of death could grow up to 7 inches long and were constantly being shed and replaced throughout the shark's lifetime. A single Megalodon could produce over 40,000 teeth during its lifespan, which is why Megalodon teeth are still found on beaches around the world today. But here's something that'll give you nightmares. Megalodon teeth aren't just big versions of great white teeth. They're actually more efficient killing instruments. The serrations along the edges are more numerous and more precisely arranged, making them perfect for slicing through whale blubber and bone. Each tooth was like a custom-designed surgical scalpel, specifically engineered for maximum damage. The extinction of Megalodon around 3.6 million years ago remains one of the great mysteries of paleontology. These creatures were so successful, so perfectly adapted to their environment, that scientists are still debating what could have possibly killed them off. Climate change, competition from other predators, and shifts in prey distribution all played a role. But the exact combination of factors remains unclear. What we do know is that the disappearance of Megalodon opened up ecological niches that allowed other marine creatures to evolve and diversify. Without these massive predators keeping populations in check, whales were able to grow larger, develop new feeding strategies, and spread into previously dangerous waters. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the absolute pinnacle of prehistoric marine terror. The creature that takes the #1 spot on our countdown isn't just the most deadly sea monster that ever lived. It's possibly the most perfectly designed killing machine in the entire history of life on Earth. Meet Plesiosaurus, and before you start thinking, this sounds like some gentle, long-necked creature that wouldn't hurt a fly, let me paint you a picture that'll change your mind forever. Imagine a sea serpent straight out of ancient mythology, but make it real. Make it 40 feet long, and give it the hunting instincts of an apex predator, combined with the patience of a sniper. Plesiosaurus lived during the Jurassic period, roughly 201 to 145 million years ago, which means they shared the oceans with some of the most dangerous marine predators that ever existed. But here's the thing. They weren't just surviving alongside these other monsters. They were thriving, and they were doing it using a completely different approach to predation that was arguably more terrifying than anything else on this list. While creatures like Megalodon relied on brute force and Dunkleosteus used armor and crushing power, Plesiosaurus was the master of stealth and precision. These creatures had small heads relative to their body size, but don't let that fool you. Those heads were packed with needle-sharp teeth designed for one specific purpose: grabbing prey and never letting go. The neck of Plesiosaurus could contain up to 76 vertebrae, making it incredibly flexible and allowing the creature to strike at prey from almost any angle. Picture a massive underwater snake that could twist and coil with lightning speed, striking with the precision of a spear and the power of a hydraulic ram. The element of surprise was their greatest weapon. But here's where Plesiosaurus becomes truly nightmare-inducing. These creatures were ambush predators that could remain perfectly motionless for hours at a time, floating in the water column like massive underwater landmines, waiting for unsuspecting prey to swim within range. When they struck, it was with such speed and accuracy that their victims had virtually no chance of escape. The hunting strategy of Plesiosaurus was psychological torture made flesh. They would position themselves near schools of fish or beneath groups of marine reptiles, then use their incredibly long necks to pick off individuals one by one. Imagine being part of a group and watching your companions disappear into the depths, snatched away by an invisible predator you couldn't even see coming. What made Plesiosaurus even more terrifying was their intelligence and social behavior. Fossil evidence suggests that these creatures may have hunted in coordinated groups, using pack tactics to corner and overwhelm larger prey. Multiple Plesiosaurus working together could effectively turn any area of the ocean into an inescapable death trap. The four paddle-like limbs of Plesiosaurus weren't just for swimming. They were precision maneuvering systems that allowed these creatures to hover, dart, and change direction with incredible accuracy. Unlike other marine reptiles that relied on raw swimming speed, Plesiosaurus could essentially fly through the water, moving in three-dimensional space with the agility of a fighter jet. The fossil record reveals something even more chilling about these creatures. Plesiosaurus specimens have been found with stomach contents that include not just fish and squid, but also the remains of other marine reptiles, some nearly as large as themselves. These weren't opportunistic scavengers picking up easy meals. They were calculated killers that actively hunted and consumed other apex predators. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Plesiosaurus was their reproduction strategy. Unlike many marine reptiles that laid eggs on land, these creatures gave birth to live young in the open ocean. This means that baby plesiosaurus were born directly into the most dangerous marine environment imaginable, already equipped with the killer instincts they'd need to survive in a world full of monsters. The young plesiosaurus faced a horrific reality from the moment of birth. Not only did they have to avoid being eaten by every other predator in the ocean, but they also had to worry about their own kind. Adult plesiosaurs were known to practice cannibalism, viewing smaller members of their own species as nothing more than convenient snacks. What makes this even more nightmarish is that plesiosaurus had incredible longevity. These creatures could live for decades, growing larger and more dangerous with each passing year. An elderly plesiosaurus was essentially a living nightmare that had been perfecting its killing techniques for half a century or more. The hunting grounds of plesiosaurus extended across the globe. Fossil remains have been discovered in Europe, North America, South America, and Australia, indicating that these creatures dominated marine ecosystems worldwide. No matter where you might have traveled in the Jurassic oceans, you would have been entering plesiosaurus territory. The extinction of plesiosaurus came with the same catastrophic events that ended the age of dinosaurs. The massive environmental changes at the end of the Cretaceous period finally brought down these masters of marine predation. But their legacy lives on in our deepest fears about what might be lurking beneath the surface of dark water. Now, before we wrap up this journey through prehistoric hell, let me paint you one final picture that'll make you appreciate just how fortunate we are that these creatures are extinct. Imagine if all 5 of these monsters existed in today's oceans simultaneously. Picture trying to enjoy a day at the beach, knowing that somewhere out there, megalodons were cruising the deep waters while Mosasaurs patrolled the shallows. Envision cargo ships having to navigate around areas where Dunkleosteus might be lurking, their armored hulls capable of ramming through steel. Consider the terror of deep-sea fishing, when Helicoprion could slice through nets and boats with equal ease. Think about the psychological horror of never knowing when a plesiosaurus might strike from the depths with lightning precision. The truth is, if these creatures still existed today, human civilization as we know it would be impossible. Maritime trade, naval warfare, recreational swimming, fishing industries, undersea exploration, all of it would be unthinkably dangerous. We'd be prisoners on land, forever cut off from 3/4 of our planet's surface by the ultimate guardians of the deep. But here's something that might keep you awake tonight. The ocean is still largely unexplored. We've mapped less than 20% of the seafloor and explored less than 5% of our oceans. Every year, scientists discover new species in the deepest trenches and most remote waters of our planet. While we can be reasonably certain that nothing as large as Megalodon or Mosasaurus is hiding down there, the possibility of smaller but equally terrifying descendants living in the abyss can't be completely ruled out. The creatures we've explored today represent millions of years of evolutionary experimentation with different approaches to marine predation. Each one found its own perfect formula for death, whether through raw power, armored protection, precision strikes, or psychological warfare. They were the result of natural selection pushed to its absolute limits, creating killing machines so efficient that they dominated their respective time periods for millions of years. What's truly remarkable is how each of these creatures faced extinction not through being outcompeted by superior predators, but through massive environmental catastrophes that reset life on Earth. The end Permian extinction that killed Helicoprion, the late Devonian events that ended Dunkleosteus, and the asteroid impact that finished off Mosasaurus and Plesiosaurus, these were planetary-scale disasters that even the most perfect predators couldn't survive. But their fossils tell us something profound about the nature of life itself. For hundreds of millions of years, the oceans were ruled by creatures so alien and terrifying that they seemed like something from another world entirely. Yet they were as real as any animal alive today, swimming through ancient seas, hunting prey, raising young, and living their lives according to the brutal laws of prehistoric nature. The fact that we're here today, able to study these creatures through their fossilized remains, is a testament to the incredible resilience of life. Despite facing extinction events that wiped out 90% or more of all species on Earth, life found a way to bounce back, evolve, and eventually give rise to creatures capable of understanding their own history. These 5 monsters of the deep represent the darkest chapters in the story of marine evolution, but they're also proof of nature's incredible capacity for creating beauty through terror. Each one was perfectly adapted to its environment, a masterpiece of biological engineering that dominated its ecosystem with ruthless efficiency. As we've journeyed through this underwater house of horrors, we've seen how different evolutionary pressures created radically different solutions to the problem of being an apex predator. From the surgical precision of Helicoprion's buzzsaw to the overwhelming power of Megalodon's bite, from the impenetrable armor of Dunkleosteus to the lightning strikes of Plesiosaurus, each creature represents a unique approach to the art of killing. The oceans of today, while still containing impressive predators like great white sharks, killer whales, and giant squid, are essentially theme parks compared to the death traps that existed in Earth's past. Modern marine ecosystems are balanced, diverse, and relatively safe for large mammals like ourselves. We can swim, dive, and explore underwater environments with reasonable confidence that we won't encounter anything truly monstrous. But the legacy of these ancient terrors lives on in our collective unconscious. The fear of dark water, the uneasiness we feel when swimming over deep areas, the primal terror that grips us when something brushes against our leg in murky water. These are all evolutionary memories of a time when such fears were absolutely justified. The next time you're floating peacefully in the ocean, take a moment to appreciate the fact that the most dangerous thing you're likely to encounter is a jellyfish, or maybe a small reef shark. Remember that you're swimming in waters that were once patrolled by creatures so terrifying that they make every monster movie look like a children's cartoon. And perhaps, most importantly, remember that these incredible creatures, despite their fearsome reputations, were not monsters in the true sense of the word. They were animals, perfectly adapted to their environments, doing what millions of years of evolution had programmed them to do. They hunted not out of malice or cruelty, but out of the fundamental need to survive and reproduce. The real monsters in this story are the catastrophic events that drove these magnificent predators to extinction. Asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, climate change, and ocean chemistry fluctuations. These were the true killers that ended entire epochs of evolutionary experimentation. Today's oceans may be safer for us, but they're also emptier. The loss of these apex predators represents not just the end of individual species, but the collapse of entire ecosystems that had been stable for millions of years. Each extinction event reset the evolutionary clock, forcing life to start over from scratch and explore new possibilities for marine predation. As we conclude our exploration of these deadly sea monsters, we're left with a profound appreciation for both the terror and the beauty of deep time. These creatures ruled the oceans for far longer than humans have existed, yet they're now nothing more than fossils and fragments scattered through rock formations around the world. Their stories remind us that life on Earth has always been a high-stakes game where the rules can change without warning. The same forces that created these perfect killing machines also ultimately destroyed them, proving that even the most successful predators are vulnerable to the larger forces that shape our planet. So the next time you hear someone complaining about sharks or other modern marine predators, you can remind them of what we've learned today. Compared to the nightmarish creatures that once ruled the seas, today's ocean predators are practically harmless. We live in an age of unprecedented marine safety, protected by the lucky accident of timing that placed our species' evolution millions of years after these monsters went extinct. But perhaps that's exactly as it should be. The ocean today is diverse, beautiful, and full of wonders that we're only just beginning to understand. Without the crushing dominance of mega-predators like Megalodon and Mosasaurs, smaller creatures have been able to evolve and fill countless ecological niches, creating the rich marine ecosystems we know and love today. The deadly sea monsters of prehistory have given us something invaluable: perspective. They remind us that the natural world is capable of creating beauty and terror in equal measure, and that our current position as the dominant species on Earth is neither permanent nor guaranteed. These creatures may be extinct, but their influence on our planet's history cannot be overstated. They shaped marine ecosystems for hundreds of millions of years, drove the evolution of countless other species, and left behind a fossil record that continues to astound and terrify us today. In many ways, their disappearance paved the way for the incredible diversity of marine life we see today. Without these ultimate apex predators keeping everything in check through sheer terror, evolution was free to experiment with new forms, new strategies, and new ways of life beneath the waves. But let's be honest about something that's been lurking in the back of your mind this entire time. As terrifying as these ancient monsters were, there's a part of you that wishes you could see them in action, isn't there? There's something absolutely captivating about the idea of witnessing pure evolutionary perfection in motion, even if it would mean certain death. That fascination isn't just morbid curiosity. It's a deep recognition of something profound about the natural world. These creatures represent life pushed to its absolute limits, evolution cranked up to 11, nature showing us what's possible when survival becomes an arms race that lasts for millions of years. Think about the engineering marvels we've discussed. Helicoprian's self-sharpening circular saw that became more deadly with age. Dunkleosteus's hydraulic jaw system that could deliver bone-crushing bites faster than the blink of an eye. Megalodon's perfectly serrated teeth that were custom-designed for maximum tissue damage. Mosasaurus's double-toothed throat that made escape literally impossible. Plesiosaurus's precision strike system that could attack from any angle with surgical accuracy. Modern engineers spend years trying to design systems half as efficient as what these creatures developed through natural selection. We build machines to cut through metal, but Helicoprian had a living buzzsaw that never needed sharpening. We create hydraulic systems for construction equipment, but Dunkleosteus had jaws that could outperform our best machinery. We design submarine weapon systems, but Plesiosaurus had targeting capabilities that would make our most advanced military technology look primitive. Here's what's truly mind-blowing. These weren't just isolated examples of evolutionary excellence. Each of these creatures existed alongside dozens of other marine predators that were equally terrifying in their own ways. The oceans of the past weren't just dangerous because of one or two apex predators. They were complete ecosystems of nightmare fuel, where every level of the food chain was occupied by something that could kill you in increasingly creative ways. Imagine being a time traveler with the ability to observe these ancient seas from a safe distance. You'd witness hunting strategies so sophisticated and brutal that they'd make nature documentaries look like children's programming. You'd see Mosasaurus coordinating pack hunts with military precision, Megalodons executing ambush attacks with calculated patience, and Plesiosaurus turning stealth predation into an art form. But here's something that'll really mess with your head. These creatures weren't just randomly violent killing machines. They were intelligent, social, and in many cases, caring parents. Fossil evidence shows us that many of these species invested significant time and energy into raising their young, teaching them hunting techniques, and protecting them from other predators. Picture a mother Mosasaurus gently guiding her babies through their first hunt, showing them how to use their double-toothed throats most effectively. Imagine a pod of Plesiosaurus working together to surround a school of fish, with the adults allowing the juveniles to make the killing strikes for practice. These were complex social creatures with rich emotional lives, not mindless eating machines. This adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of these ancient monsters. They weren't evil or malicious. They were simply perfectly adapted to a world where violence was the primary currency of survival. In their time, being an apex predator wasn't a choice. It was an evolutionary necessity. The fossil record tells us something else that's absolutely fascinating. These creatures were constantly evolving and improving their killing techniques. Over millions of years, we can track how their weapons became more efficient, their hunting strategies more sophisticated, and their social structures more complex. They were engaged in an endless evolutionary arms race, each generation slightly better at dealing death than the last. What's particularly chilling is how this arms race affected their prey species. Every improvement in predator capability forced prey animals to develop new defenses, which in turn drove predators to become even more deadly. It was an endless cycle of escalation that produced some of the most bizarre and terrifying creatures in Earth's history. For instance, the presence of massive predators like Megalodon drove the evolution of incredibly thick-skinned whales with sophisticated echolocation systems for predator detection. But then, Megalodon evolved better ambush techniques to counter these defenses. The prey got faster, so the predators got smarter. The prey developed armor, so the predators developed better weapons. It was biological warfare on a scale that's hard to comprehend. Now, here's where things get really interesting from a scientific perspective. The extinction of these mega predators didn't just remove dangerous animals from the oceans. It fundamentally changed how marine ecosystems functioned at every level. Without apex predators keeping populations in check through predation pressure, entirely new ecological niches opened up. Modern whales, for example, were able to evolve filter-feeding strategies that would have been impossible in oceans dominated by Megalodon. The gentle giants we know today could never have survived in waters patrolled by 60-foot sharks, with bite forces capable of crushing small buildings. The absence of mega predators literally made peaceful coexistence possible. But this raises a disturbing question that keeps marine biologists awake at night. What if these creatures weren't really extinct? What if smaller populations survived in the deepest trenches of our oceans, evolving in isolation for millions of years? The Mariana Trench reaches depths of over 36,000 feet, creating environments so extreme and isolated that they might as well be on another planet. We know that life can survive in the most incredible conditions. Organisms thrive around volcanic vents in crushing darkness, in water so hot it would cook most life forms instantly. If life can adapt to those conditions, who's to say that descendants of these ancient predators couldn't have found ways to survive in the deep ocean trenches? Consider this. We discover new species of deep-sea creatures every single year, many of them completely unlike anything we've seen before. Just last year, scientists found sharks living at depths previously thought impossible for complex life. If modern sharks can adapt to such extreme conditions, what about creatures that had millions of years to perfect their deep-water survival techniques? The technology for exploring the deepest parts of our oceans is still in its infancy. Our most advanced submersibles can only reach the deepest trenches for brief periods, and the areas they can explore represent a tiny fraction of the deep ocean environment. We're essentially trying to map an alien world with a flashlight and a notepad. Every deep-sea expedition brings back evidence of creatures that seem impossible according to our current understanding of biology. Transparent fish with antifreeze proteins in their blood, predators that create their own light shows to confuse prey. Creatures that have evolved to withstand pressures that would instantly crush any surface-dwelling animal. If the deep ocean can produce such incredible adaptations in creatures we know about, imagine what might be lurking in the areas we haven't explored yet. The possibility that some lineage of ancient mega-predators found a way to survive in the deep ocean isn't just science fiction. It's a legitimate scientific question that we simply don't have enough data to answer definitively. But let's step back from the edge of that particular rabbit hole and consider something even more important. What these extinct predators teach us about the fragility of life on Earth. Each of these creatures was perfectly adapted to its environment, the pinnacle of millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Yet they all succumbed to environmental changes that happened too quickly for them to adapt. The lesson here isn't just about the past. It's about the present and future. We're currently living through what many scientists consider the sixth mass extinction event in Earth's history, with species disappearing at rates not seen since the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. The same forces that brought down Megalodon and Mosasaurs are at work today, just operating on different time scales and through different mechanisms. Climate change, ocean acidification, pollution, and habitat destruction are creating environmental pressures that even our most successful modern predators may not be able to survive. The great white sharks that we consider apex predators today face challenges that their ancestors never encountered: plastic pollution, chemical contamination, and rapidly changing water temperatures. What's particularly sobering is that modern apex predators don't have the luxury of deep time that allowed ancient species to adapt to changing conditions. The environmental changes happening today are occurring over decades rather than millions of years. Evolution simply can't keep pace with human-induced changes to marine ecosystems. This means that we might be witnessing the end of another era of marine predation. Not through asteroid impacts or massive volcanic eruptions, but through the cumulative effects of human activity on ocean environments. The apex predators of today could become the fossils that future scientists study, wondering how such perfectly adapted killing machines could have possibly gone extinct. But there's also reason for hope in the story of these ancient monsters. Life has survived multiple mass extinction events, each time bouncing back with new forms and new strategies for survival. The diversity of marine life we see today exists because previous extinctions cleared the way for new evolutionary experiments. Every mass extinction in Earth's history has been followed by a period of rapid diversification as life rushes to fill empty ecological niches. The extinction that ended the age of marine reptiles paved the way for the rise of marine mammals. The loss of ancient sharks created opportunities for new predator species to evolve. Each catastrophic ending became a new beginning. The resilience of life is perhaps the most important lesson we can take from studying these extinct predators. Despite facing environmental catastrophes that would make our worst climate change scenarios look mild, life found ways to survive, adapt, and thrive. Not the same species that existed before, but new forms that were equally remarkable in their own ways. These ancient sea monsters represent both the incredible creative power of evolution and its ultimate limitations. They show us that nature can produce creatures of unimaginable power and complexity, but also that no species, no matter how perfectly adapted, is guaranteed permanent success. Change is the only constant in the natural world, and adaptability is more valuable than raw power. As we face our own environmental challenges, the story of these extinct predators offers both warning and inspiration. It warns us that even the most successful species can disappear if environmental changes happen too quickly. But it also inspires us with evidence of life's incredible capacity for resilience and renewal. The oceans that once hosted these nightmarish predators are now home to whales that sing across ocean basins, dolphins that play and create art with bubbles, and countless species of fish that form living rainbows in coral reefs. Beauty emerged from terror, complexity from simplicity, cooperation from competition. Perhaps that's the most important thing to remember as we conclude this journey through prehistoric waters. These monsters weren't aberrations or mistakes of evolution. They were necessary steps in the long process that eventually led to the diverse, beautiful, and relatively peaceful marine ecosystems we know today. Without the evolutionary pressure created by apex predators like Megalodon, prey species never would have developed the intelligence, speed, and social behaviors that make modern marine mammals so remarkable. Without the ecological niches left vacant by extinct giants, smaller species never would have had the opportunity to diversify into the incredible variety of forms we see today. The deadly sea monsters of prehistory weren't just instruments of death. They were sculptors of life, shaping the evolution of countless species through millions of years of predator-prey interactions. Their legacy lives on not just in our nightmares, but in the very DNA of every creature swimming in today's oceans. So the next time you find yourself floating peacefully in warm ocean waters, remember the incredible journey that brought you to this moment of safety. Remember the eons of terror that preceded our time, the countless generations of creatures that lived and died under the shadow of perfect predators, and the miraculous chain of extinctions and adaptations that cleared the way for our species to inherit the earth. The monsters are gone, but their story continues in every wave that breaks on the shore, in every school of fish that moves through the water column, and in every breath of ocean air that fills our lungs. We are the inheritors of their legacy, the beneficiaries of their disappearance, and the guardians of the gentler world they left behind. The ocean calls to us not because it's completely safe, but because it's safe enough. Safe enough for us to explore, to wonder, to swim without fear of being torn apart by 60-foot sharks or crushed by armored giants. We live in the first era in Earth's history, where the sea is more friend than foe, more refuge than trap. That's a gift beyond measure, bought with the extinction of creatures so perfectly adapted to killing that they ruled the waves for hundreds of millions of years. We owe it to them, to ourselves, and to the future to appreciate just how remarkable our current moment in Earth's history really is. The age of sea monsters is over. The age of wonder has just begun. The age of sea monsters may be over, but their influence on our planet extends far beyond the fossil record. What's truly mind-bending is how these creatures shaped not just marine ecosystems, but the very chemistry of our oceans and atmosphere. The massive populations of ancient predators like Megalodon weren't just swimming around eating things randomly. They were biological engines that processed nutrients and minerals on a scale that's almost impossible to comprehend. Think about this for a second. A single megalodon could consume several tons of whale meat in a single feeding session. Multiply that by thousands of individuals across the world's oceans, feeding multiple times per week for millions of years. We're talking about nutrient cycling on a planetary scale, with these apex predators essentially functioning as living conveyor belts that moved minerals and organic compounds between different ocean depths and regions. When these massive predators died, their decomposing bodies would sink to the ocean floor, carrying with them enormous quantities of nutrients that had been concentrated from the surface waters. This biological pump was so powerful that it literally shaped the chemistry of ancient seafloor sediments. Geologists can still identify layers in rock formations that correspond to periods when mega-predators were most abundant, based solely on the unusual concentrations of certain minerals and organic compounds. But here's where it gets really fascinating from a global perspective. The extinction of these creatures didn't just change marine ecosystems. It fundamentally altered the planet's carbon cycle. Modern computer models suggest that the loss of mega-predators like Mosasaurs and Megalodon may have contributed to significant changes in atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, potentially influencing global climate patterns for millions of years after their disappearance. The reason for this is both elegant and terrifying in its implications. These massive predators were essentially living carbon storage units. When they died in deep water, their bodies would sink to abyssal depths where the carbon in their tissues would remain locked away from the atmosphere for geological timescales. The sudden absence of this biological carbon pump may have allowed more carbon to remain in surface waters and eventually return to the atmosphere. What makes this even more remarkable is that we're still discovering the extent of these ancient predators' influence on our planet. Every year, new research reveals additional ways that their presence shaped not just their immediate environment, but global ocean circulation patterns, nutrient distribution, and even the evolution of microscopic organisms that form the base of marine food webs. Recent studies of ancient plankton fossils have revealed something absolutely stunning. During periods when mega-predators were most abundant, even the tiny organisms at the bottom of the food chain showed adaptations that can only be explained by the presence of massive apex predators. Microscopic marine creatures developed more efficient reproduction strategies, faster growth rates, and more sophisticated chemical defenses, all in response to predation pressure that filtered down through multiple levels of the food web. This means that creatures like Helicoprion weren't just affecting the fish they directly hunted. Their presence was so overwhelming that it influenced the evolutionary trajectory of organisms they never even encountered. The terror they inspired traveled through the ecosystem like ripples in a pond, ultimately touching every living thing in the ancient oceans. But perhaps the most mind-blowing aspect of these discoveries is what they tell us about the interconnectedness of life on Earth. The extinction of a handful of mega-predator species triggered cascading effects that reshaped entire ecosystems over millions of years. Species that had never directly interacted with these giants suddenly found themselves in a completely different world, with new opportunities and new challenges that drove rapid evolutionary change. Consider what happened to whale evolution after the extinction of Megalodon. For millions of years, whale ancestors were constrained by the constant threat of being eaten by sharks the size of school buses. They had to remain relatively small, fast, and agile to survive. But once Megalodon disappeared, whales were suddenly free to explore entirely new evolutionary strategies. The result was an explosive radiation of whale diversity that gave us everything from the massive blue whales we know today to the echolocating dolphins that can navigate in complete darkness. Without the crushing predation pressure of mega sharks, whales could afford to become larger, slower, and more specialized in their feeding strategies. They could develop complex social behaviors that would have been impossible when any gathering of whales was essentially a dinner invitation for passing megalodons. This evolutionary release didn't just affect whales, seals, sea otters, penguins, and countless species of fish all experienced similar explosions of diversity once the ultimate apex predators were gone. The modern marine ecosystems we love and admire exist only because these ancient monsters cleared the evolutionary stage through their own extinction. What's particularly sobering is that this process is still ongoing. Scientists estimate that marine ecosystems are still adjusting to the absence of mega-predators, even millions of years after their extinction. The complex web of predator-prey relationships we observe today is still settling into new patterns, still exploring possibilities that were unthinkable when the seas were ruled by creatures like Mosasaurs and Dunkleosteus. This has profound implications for how we understand modern conservation efforts. When we try to protect marine ecosystems today, we're not preserving some natural balance that has existed for millions of years. We're protecting systems that are still recovering from the most dramatic ecological upheaval in marine history. The absence of mega-predators is still the defining characteristic of our oceans, and it will remain so for millions of years to come. But here's something that'll really mess with your understanding of these ancient creatures. They weren't just mindless killing machines that happened to be really good at eating things. Recent advances in paleoneurology, the study of fossilized brain tissue, have revealed that many of these predators had remarkably sophisticated nervous systems that rival those of modern intelligent species. Fossilized skull cavities from large Mosasaurus specimens show evidence of highly developed brain structures associated with complex problem-solving, spatial reasoning, and even what appears to be emotional processing. These weren't just swimming appetites with teeth. They were intelligent beings capable of learning, planning, and possibly even experiencing something analogous to emotions like curiosity, frustration, and satisfaction. Brain reconstructions of Megalodon suggest that these massive sharks had enlarged cerebellums and forebrain structures that indicate remarkable spatial awareness and the ability to process multiple sensory inputs simultaneously. They could track dozens of different scent trails through the water while monitoring water pressure changes that might indicate the movement of prey, all while navigating complex three-dimensional underwater terrain. What makes this even more incredible is evidence suggesting that these predators were capable of cultural transmission, passing learned behaviors from one generation to the next. Fossil sites have revealed hunting grounds that were used continuously by the same species for hundreds of thousands of years, with evidence of increasingly sophisticated hunting techniques being employed over time. Imagine Megalodon mothers teaching their young the most effective angles of attack for different whale species, or Mosasaurus pods developing region-specific hunting dialects that were refined and passed down through generations. These creatures weren't just following genetic programming. They were creating and sharing knowledge, building upon the discoveries of their predecessors to become even more effective predators. The social structures of these ancient monsters were probably far more complex than we've traditionally imagined. Fossil evidence suggests that many species formed long-term pair bonds, engaged in cooperative hunting, and even displayed what appears to be mourning behavior when pack members were killed. They weren't solitary psychopaths randomly murdering everything they encountered. They were social beings with rich emotional lives who just happened to be perfectly designed for underwater warfare. This adds another layer of tragedy to their extinction stories. When environmental catastrophes wiped out these species, we didn't just lose individual animals. We lost entire cultures of predatory knowledge that had been accumulating for millions of years. Hunting techniques that had been refined across countless generations. Social behaviors that had evolved to maximize group survival. And even primitive forms of what might have been art or play behavior, all vanished in the geological blink of an eye. But their cultural legacy didn't completely disappear. Modern marine predators still exhibit behaviors that appear to be evolutionary echoes of techniques first developed by their ancient predecessors. Great white sharks use ambush strategies that are remarkably similar to those employed by Megalodon, despite being separated by millions of years of evolution. Killer whales coordinate pack hunts using tactics that mirror those developed by Mosasaurus pods in Cretaceous seas. What's even more fascinating is how these behavioral patterns have been preserved and transmitted across multiple extinction events. The knowledge encoded in DNA and learned behaviors was so valuable for survival that it managed to survive even when the species that developed it went extinct. Modern predators are essentially using instruction manuals written by creatures they've never met, following playbooks developed by monsters that died out before their lineages even existed. This raises profound questions about the nature of intelligence and consciousness in non-human species. If these ancient predators were capable of culture, learning, and emotional processing, what does that say about the inner lives of modern marine creatures? How much of what we consider uniquely human intelligence might actually be variations on themes first explored by prehistoric sea monsters? Recent research on modern great whites has revealed cognitive capabilities that would have seemed impossible just a few decades ago. They can recognize individual humans, remember specific locations for years at a time, and adjust their hunting strategies based on seasonal prey availability. If their modern descendants are this intelligent, imagine the cognitive capabilities of creatures that had millions of additional years to refine their mental abilities. The more we learn about these ancient predators, the more we realize that their extinction represents not just the loss of species, but the loss of entire civilizations of underwater intelligence. They had their own cultures, their own accumulated wisdom, their own ways of understanding and interacting with their environment. In many ways, the extinction events that eliminated them were intellectual catastrophes as much as biological ones. This perspective transforms how we think about mass extinctions in general. We typically focus on the loss of biodiversity, the collapse of ecosystems, and the interruption of evolutionary processes. But we rarely consider the loss of accumulated knowledge, the destruction of non-human cultures, and the elimination of alternative forms of intelligence that took millions of years to develop. When we look at the fossil remains of these creatures today, we're not just seeing bones and teeth. We're looking at the last physical evidence of minds that solved problems we can barely imagine, that developed strategies for survival in environments we've never experienced, and that created complex social structures in a three-dimensional world where territory and resources were distributed across thousands of cubic miles of water. The hunting grounds these predators established, the migration routes they developed, the communication systems they used to coordinate group activities across vast distances. All of this represents a form of prehistoric technology that was every bit as sophisticated as anything humans have developed. The difference is that their technology was biological rather than mechanical, encoded in genetics and behavior rather than written in books or stored in computers. What's particularly humbling is the realization that these creatures were probably far better adapted to their environment than we are to ours. They lived sustainably in their ecosystems for millions of years, without causing the kind of widespread environmental destruction that human civilization has managed in just a few centuries. Their predation actually enhanced ecosystem stability rather than disrupting it. Modern ecological modeling shows that the presence of apex predators like these ancient giants would have prevented many of the boom and bust population cycles that characterize modern marine ecosystems. By keeping prey populations in check and preventing any single species from becoming too dominant, megapredators maintained a balance that allowed for maximum biodiversity and ecosystem resilience. This means that these terrifying creatures were actually keystone species whose presence was essential for maintaining healthy ocean environments. They weren't destructive forces randomly eliminating other species. They were biological regulators that maintained the complex balance necessary for long-term ecosystem stability. Their extinction didn't just remove dangerous predators from the oceans. It removed the primary mechanism that had kept marine ecosystems stable for hundreds of millions of years. The loss of this regulatory function had consequences that are still playing out today. Modern marine ecosystems experience population explosions and crashes that would have been impossible when mega-predators were present to maintain balance. Jellyfish blooms that cover thousands of square miles, algae die-offs that create massive dead zones, and the collapse of commercial fish stocks all represent ecosystem instabilities that were largely prevented by the presence of apex predators. What makes this even more significant is that these regulatory functions operated on multiple scales simultaneously. Individual predators controlled local prey populations through direct predation. Regional populations of predators influenced migration patterns and breeding cycles across entire ocean basins. And the global population of mega-predators helped maintain the chemical balance of the world's oceans through their role in nutrient cycling and carbon sequestration. The extinction of these creatures essentially removed the operating system that had kept Earth's marine environments running smoothly for geological ages. We're now living in a world where the oceans are essentially running without their primary regulatory mechanisms, trying to maintain stability through whatever backup systems evolution can cobble together on the fly. This has profound implications for understanding current marine conservation challenges. Many of the problems we face today, from coral reef degradation to the collapse of commercial fisheries, can be traced back to the absence of the regulatory functions that mega-predators once provided. We're trying to manage marine ecosystems that were designed to be controlled by creatures that no longer exist. Some scientists have proposed that this regulatory gap might explain why marine ecosystems seem particularly vulnerable to human-induced changes. Without the stabilizing influence of apex predators, ocean environments may be inherently more fragile and less resilient to additional stressors like pollution, overfishing, and climate change. But here's where the story takes an interesting turn toward the present day. As we've learned more about the ecological roles these ancient predators played, some researchers have begun exploring whether modern technology might allow us to artificially recreate some of their regulatory functions. Could we develop robotic systems that mimic the population control effects of mega-predators? Might genetic engineering allow us to enhance the capabilities of existing predator species to fill some of the ecological niches left vacant by extinction? These aren't just theoretical questions anymore. Several research programs are actively working on developing artificial predator systems that could help restore balance to marine ecosystems. Autonomous underwater vehicles equipped with advanced sensors and AI systems could potentially monitor and manage fish populations in ways that approximate the effects of natural predation, without the danger of reintroducing actual mega-predators. Other projects are exploring whether existing predator species could be enhanced through careful breeding programs or even genetic modification to become more effective ecosystem regulators. Could great white sharks be bred for larger size and enhanced intelligence? Might it be possible to increase the population density of killer whales to levels that would provide more effective top-down ecosystem control? The ethical and practical challenges of such approaches are enormous, but the potential benefits are equally significant. If we could restore even a fraction of the regulatory capacity that was lost with mega-predator extinction, it might be possible to dramatically improve the health and stability of marine ecosystems worldwide. Of course, there's also the possibility that nature might eventually solve this problem on its own. Evolution is still operating in marine environments, and the ecological niches left vacant by extinct mega-predators represent enormous opportunities for existing species to diversify and expand their roles. Given enough time, some lineage of modern predators might evolve to fill the gap left by creatures like Megalodon and Mosasaurs. There is already some evidence that this process may be underway. Great white sharks have been growing larger on average over the past few decades, possibly in response to reduced competition and increased prey availability. Killer whale populations in some regions have developed new hunting strategies and expanded their prey range in ways that weren't observed in historical records. Some species of giant squid appear to be becoming more aggressive and active hunters, potentially moving into ecological roles previously occupied by marine reptiles. And there you have it, folks. 5 absolutely terrifying sea monsters that make today's ocean predators look like cuddly pets. From Helicoprian's living buzzsaw to Megalodon's bone-crushing bite, from Dunkleosteus's armored nightmare fuel to Plesiosaurus's surgical precision strikes, these creatures dominated Earth's waters with a level of deadly efficiency that would make modern military weapons designers weep with envy. The next time you're floating peacefully in the ocean, remember that you're swimming in waters once ruled by monsters so perfectly designed for killing that they make every horror movie look like a children's cartoon. Thank your lucky stars that mass extinctions cleared these apex predators from the seas millions of years before humans ever existed. Because if they were still out there, we'd be nothing more than bite-sized snacks.